I went to this weekend to be coached by the OSBA, to be a good school board member, and I heard things that I thought are problematic for education. What I heard was that I needed to be a cheerleader for my district. We needed to be a unified front, that all 5 of us need to be a unanimous vote pretty much, that we could disagree in the back room, but once we got out in front, we needed to be a united front. I thought, well, that goes against what I think is that why would we have 5 school board members then? If we're really only to have one voice, why do we elect 5 school board? That made no sense to me. So much of what they kept saying made no sense because I thought, I know why I was elected. I was elected to represent the taxpayer on behalf of the students. I wasn't there to be a cheerleader for the district. If the district needed somebody to tell on them, I think that's why I'm there. I need to set the record straight with the community, and I was going to do that. So I left that weekend thinking, I am not going to be a good school board member. I'm not going to meet their model for being a good school board member because I'm not going to follow that philosophy. I know why I was elected. And I was elected because we had 4 levies that had failed. The community was saying, no, you have enough money, make ends meet with what you've got, reform your system, do what you've got to do, but we're done. And we had had, in the last 20 years before I got there, 9 levies that passed. So they were funneling money to them. I mean, the community was generous. They were giving them money right and left every other year. So the community finally said no. And I was a no voter. I put a sign at the end of my drive for those 4, and I said no. I have 5 children in the district, but I'm still saying no. I pay 10 grand a year. I'm done. I'm done. My property tax, 70% of your property taxes go to fund the schools, which is, that's what it takes, I guess. As long as 50% plus 1 say yes to the levy, you're going to be paying more property tax. In our case, it was that 50% plus 1 that said no, so they failed. So when I got on the school board, the 4 of them that were there, who are not like-minded with my philosophy, but they voted to put the levy back on the ballot for the 5th time. I said no, so I already went against the coaching of the OSBA because I didn't follow the party line. I said no, but I read a speech as to why I said no. I said no because the community had spoken. The community wanted us to reform the way we were spending and stop asking for more. I thought we owed it to them to do that. So I said don't put it back on. So that 5th levy failed, which I said it would, failed by more than it had failed by before. And of course they blamed me because I didn't go along. And I said, honestly, I only voted once. So the other 6,700 voted their conscience. I only voted once. So it's not like I could vote 6,700 times. I'm not, anyway. I will go there. I could. Okay, but I thought, you know, from then on, I just started saying no to things that didn't make sense to me. And I started asking questions. How is what we're doing the right thing for children? How do we know what we're doing is the right thing? Please explain to me how tenure is good for the children. Please explain to me how pickup, which is a bonus system for the administrators, is good for the children. When we had to do away with busing, because you know during those levy campaigns, you will do away with a lot of things. It's a cookbook methodology. I'm pretty sure they say step A, take away busing. Step B, you increase the pay-to-play price tags so that parents start working for this levy because they can't afford the pay-to-play fees. Step 2, we took textbooks completely out of the budget. Can't order textbooks. Oh my gosh, how can you teach without a textbook, right? So we took special ed, gifted services, field trips. All these things started going. So, but we don't have to do that. We have $55 million for 5,500 students. Why are we doing that? Class sizes are huge, the buildings are falling apart, you know, the usual. And I said, really? Okay, let's find another model. And we have a new model, but every time I said no, and I'm coaching you guys to do this, every time somebody on your school board doesn't follow the party line and votes a different way, support them on that. Say kudos to you, you didn't follow what everybody else said, you gave your rationale, you gave your reason, good for you. Whether you agree with them or not, they at least separated themselves as an individual, not as one person. We got to say good for you. So I didn't have a whole lot of people in the audience. You know, people don't go to the school board. So I had to kind of just pat myself on the back as I left. Think, okay, I did the right thing for the kids. You're going to be kind of lonely for a while, but that's okay. But we started doing some other things. But again, I was asking these kinds of questions, which please community members start asking. Start asking your schools. Email them these questions. Okay, but ask, how do we know we're doing what we need to do? Ask, how do we know we have the best of the best? Because again, the levies are passed based on the rhetoric that we have to pay and benefit the way we are to keep the best of the best. Employees, I guess. So, have you ever heard a school say they have the worst of the worst? Don't they all say we have the best of the best? How could we all have the best of the best? You mean there's nobody there that's not working to their fullest? But how do we know we have the best of the best? We have never measured teaching effectiveness. So how would we know? Right? So that was my question often. And then, how do we know it's for the kids? Tell me, explain to me how that decision to spend that money is good for our children. Right? Always. And are we spending what we should? What are we missing? Start with how we're doing globally. So I'm going to share with you. Let me just stop for a second. The reason I want to share things with you guys tonight is, one, to let you know that this organization exists called Ohio School Board Leadership Council. I'm going to talk about OSBA, your school board members coach. We're going to be different from them. We are going to coach school board members to ask the questions, to insist they get answers, to write policies that are good for the kids, and make sure the superintendent and treasurer follow those policies, because that's why the board member's there. They're not there to be a cheerleader for their district. We need to stop telling them that. We need to tell them why they are there and remind them that's my organization. So I'm telling you so you can help the board members decide. But one of the questions is, how are we doing globally? There's a test called the PISA test. I'll get to more of it in a minute. But overall, the United States is the red bar compared to these other countries and how we score on the PISA test. The last PISA test was conducted in 2009. I think it was published in 2010. Now, we just had one this last year. PISA was conducted in 2012, and the results won't be available until December of this year. So I'm still using 2009 data. It might sound old, but that's the only data that we have right now to use. But because there's been nothing either nationally or within the state instituted that'll change those results, I believe that 12 results will be the same. I don't think we've gained global ground. In fact, I'm thinking we've done worse. But PISA is the Program for International Student Assessment. 2009 scores were based on 60 other countries. Only 33 of those were industrialized. In science, 22 other countries did better than the US. In math, 31 other countries did better than the US. And in reading, 14 other countries did better than the US. And by a speech done by Pascal Forgione, Commissioner of Educational Statistics, says, these are his quotes, results of the TIMSS tests involving 500,000 students in 41 countries were authoritative. By the time our students are ready to leave high school, ready to enter higher education in the labor force, they're doing so badly with science, they are significantly weaker than the peers in other countries. Our idea of advanced is clearly below the international standards, but there appears to be a consistent weakness in our teaching performance in the physical sciences that become magnified over the years. Now, I want to say here, I'll stop right here. I don't believe that our teachers are at fault. I believe the system is at fault. 50% of that system, my opinion this time, not his words, are parents. I believe that parents have started dropping the ball with their responsibility for their children's education. Has that been fostered by a government environment that we'll take on the role? It's okay, sit back, we'll do it for you. Or send them to me every part of your day, or send them to athletics. We don't have them much of the day if they're involved in everything imaginable. We need to start taking control of our own children's education and say, if my child isn't scoring well, parent, that's your fault. And then the system's fault. But at least half of that blame has to be put on parents and put back on their laps. Get your child a supplemental education then. Get your child into music. Get your child foreign language. Get your child into stuff. And it has to come back on the parents, okay? So that's part of it. I'm not blaming teachers. I won't do that. I'm a teacher. So I've got a little bit of a bias. But I blame that they are a part of a system that's meant to disguise the truth from us, and that's unfortunate. There are organizations making them look bad, but I don't think they individually are necessarily the bad guy in the thing. But, go to the next. Also, he says, the results in short of the TIMSS test show that fourth graders performing poorly, middle school students worse, high school students are unable to compete. By the same criteria we used to say we're average in elementary schools, we appear to be near the bottom at the high school level. People have a tendency to think that that picture is bleak, but that doesn't apply to me or my school. My school is better than that. That's true of most of the schools in the state of Ohio because of this ranking, and I'll get back to that in a minute. We tend to think it's not us. But chances are that even if your school compares well in the SAT scores, that's the high school scores that get them into college, it will be a lightweight on the international standards or scale. And it always leads you to that question, are we just not spending enough? Today's report was, not today, but in the last couple months, we are the highest in the world in what we spend, and that's adjusted for currency. Spending again, here shows the United States. Here's what we've been spending over time since 1970 all the way up to 12. That's the spending scale. So we have been throwing money at it. And then down below, the lines that go straight across are science, reading, and math scores. So they're fairly flat. So we have been putting the money towards it. We've got flat results, so something, again, in the system is not working. Okay, here's spending Ohio with regard to the country. And here is, I'm sorry, this is U.S. still, sorry, in SATs. SAT is that graduation test that they take before they get into college. And again, we've been spending the money, and the SATs are flat. Another measure of teaching effectiveness or system failure. Is it class size? Maybe we've been, getting these class sizes so large that we can't teach them anymore. But here's the data on class size over time. It's been going down. And if you look at our global class size, if you compare us to the countries who are doing better than us, a lot of them, at least the Asian countries, have 30 to 38 students per classroom, whereas in the United States we have 23 to 28 students per classroom. I know that's true in our district. We have 23 to 28. This is in the state of Ohio, okay? Just Ohio, spending over time versus math and reading results. This was produced, all these slides have a reference. This isn't something I developed. I just stole them from other people. This came from a report that was called When Students Matter Most, and it was done by someone at the Ohio Department of Education. Okay, looking at spending, this came from a report called Grading on a Curve, and I sent that stuff to you today, a bunch of references. That's on there. Great report, just published. You got to take a look at it. So I glommed onto one of her charts. And again, it's showing the number of schools over time in Ohio that have been rated excellent. But then it's showing our spending on gifted services. So, and I've said that some of our problems are that we're not paying attention to those students who are just kind of sitting in the classroom who could be better served by some other types of services. I don't think we're adequately identifying them, and I don't think we're adequately putting the resources towards what they need. Often my students would complain, my kids, because once they got their homework done, they're saying, okay, go read, because I've got to address these other needs over here. So part of that problem and system failure may be that we've gone to this inclusion type classroom. I don't know. We certainly should look at that, where everybody on the whole learning continuum is in one classroom. And it's difficult then for a teacher to say, okay, these guys need extra, these guys don't need it, so I'm going to let them just go. I worked very hard for Romney. I'm sure a lot of people in here did. I'm the chairman of the Warren County Tea Party. We have 1,200 members. We got together and we stuffed 10,000 voter bags and we walked neighborhoods and got those voter bags out. I worked hard for him. But doggone it, that guy said something in a debate that just knocked me out of my chair. He said that we had to hire people from other countries because we just don't have those specialties and the expertise here. And I thought that's because we're failing our students. We have those smart kids. We have them. We're just dropping the ball. We're not taking them to the upper echelon where they need to go. Now I have a pharmacy major, and I have a pre-med major, and I have a bilingual nurse. The 3 of mine are in college doing those things. So maybe they'll make it there, but it's tough. This is in a recent report, Huffington Post, in fact, where it ranks Ohio just right in the middle of progress academically. Okay? Wow, we're most improved. Did you guys get Dayton Daily out this? Is it too far? Dayton Daily is our newspaper in our area, and I don't call them a newspaper. Notice I'll never say Dayton Daily News. I call them a tabloid. I've done it to them, right to them. They know I'm not really happy with the reporting, but they reported this. Ohio schools boost ranking in two U.S. studies. States showed improvement in national quality count scores. The rest of the story, though, is that according to the national quality count scores, teachers earned a C+ for 2011 in the biennial report. The state had received a D+ 2 years earlier, making it the most improved state, or one of the most improved states in that study. Quality Counts Index was previously reported by the Dayton Daily, put Ohio at 10th in the nation with an overall average grade of a C+. The nation as a whole received a C in quality counts for 2011. Okay?
So we're supposed to be excited about the mediocrity that
Yep. We had, and this is really helpful, you may want to let your school boards know that we had a person from the Ohio School Board, his name's Tom Gunlock, he's the vice president of the Ohio School Board. He came in and gave a presentation to our school board and our community. And we had a lot of community members in there that day, which is unusual, but they were mad at us for something. But so they were, filling the audience, but he gave us a fabulous presentation. And that's exactly what they're saying at the state level. We are mediocre. I'm sorry to tell you, you excellent and excellent with distinction schools, we're just mediocre. And he was telling us at Springboro that you've got places to go here. You've got a lot of progress you need to make to get your students where they should be. And it's hard to hear that, but that's what we are. Okay, so when these metrics are examined more closely, a less than top 10 performance emergence. Ohio ranking on the percent of schools where the 8th graders taking algebra is the norm, Ohio ranked 28, because 8th graders don't typically take algebra in Ohio. Ohio ranking on the number of students with a high AP score, advanced prep, or those classes that kids take in high school to prepare them for college. And they also take an exam at the end of that course to see if they can test out of a college course. So that's an AP course, and you want your kids to take AP courses. But Ohio ranking on the number of students with high AP scores, it only goes up to 5. We ranked 27th in the country. Percent of students achieving at advanced levels on the 8th grade national exam, Ohio ranked 33. Again, not up there, that's right in the middle. It's right in the middle. Ohio's education system is geared towards proficiency, so I need to define that. Until we go beyond the mindset that mediocre equals excellent, Ohio will never be one of the top ranking states that would benefit all Ohio students. This is again, I kind of took this from Tom Gunlock's presentation, and he said the current system asks too little. And he's referring to the state of Ohio current system. The successes that he mentioned, all these schools with excellent with distinction, are based on minimums. And what does he mean by minimums? He says these successes are based on a system that was designed in the 1980s, and it was designed to measure the 8th, 9th, and 10th grade abilities in basic subjects to graduate. These are not the skills which prepare students to be accepted to college without the need to take remedial courses, nor are they the skills needed to get a good paying job immediately after graduating high school. Okay, I want to explain proficiency. When a student takes a standardized test in the state of Ohio, they get a report back. And the report back will tell you, each parent, where the student falls, and it also tells the district. So the district uses that information to kind of guide their curriculum. But here's what the state of Ohio accepts. Proficient is like a middle score, and then the next layer is accelerated, the next layer is advanced. But a school district has 26 different education indicators. And to pass one of those education indicators, for example, let's say it's 3rd grade reading, okay, that's one of them. You have to have 75% of your students who grade or get proficient. Now, proficient for third grade reading means that that student only has to get correct 57% of the questions. So if my student came home with a test score that was a 57%, what am I supposed to think? He's okay? Because proficient kind of means, oh, you're okay. I'm saying that's a failing score. All the way up to a 69, that's proficient. So only 75% of the students have to get proficient to be a point towards your 26 scores. Okay? And I know of a school, Southwestern, in this area, who last year failed 13 of the 26 indicators but still got an excellent rating.
What?
Yes, failed even that. I mean, it's really easy to pass these indicators, and they still flunked half the indicators and still got excellent. Now, what's good, there is some good news, is that our legislators recognize that. And they're now out there telling everybody, just like I am, we have a problem, Houston. We're inflating our education egos at the cost of the students. And there's reasons for that, but I'll get to that. But over here, look at 7th grade math. A student can only has to get correct 32% of those questions. They only have to answer 32% of those questions correctly, and they're proficient. And you only need 75% of your class to get it. So see how we're failing, that we're letting that happen. Now, if you ask Ohio, I mean, I'm sure they're pretty honest with this. They'll tell you, actually, in Grading on a Curve, that was written by one of our legislative assistants. It's awesome. But she writes in there that the reason we have more and more schools getting excellent with distinction is because they keep lowering this cut score. So again, it's not that we're doing better on these tests. I just showed you. We're throwing the money at it. We're reducing class size, and everything's flat. So what are we doing wrong? Okay. Again, this is the number of schools. When the whole system started, the excellent with distinction, here's how many schools got it, 85. Look at today. Up there, the one on the end. Okay, and it's not because the students are scoring better. We saw that across the other charts. It means that we've lowered those cut scores it takes to get a point towards acceptable rating. Are we advanced? The state of Ohio believes that 42% of our 4th grade reading exams are advanced. But if we put that same Ohio scale against the national scale, here's how many of our students would be advanced. So Ohio's got our little special way of looking at things that on the national scale wouldn't put us where we are. Again, we have a state problem. I think we have a national problem, but we definitely have a state problem with not recognizing our deficiencies. Okay, how do we compare how we're doing? Mostly what we've done in this state is one district will compare themselves to another district. And I think I was the first one to use this terminology, but I said, why are we comparing ourselves to other failing systems? Let's stop. There's got to be another model. And my suggestion, you know, I'm Tea Party, so we all kind of go to that free market. Why aren't we comparing ourselves to the free market and saying, can we compare, can we do better, can we compete, and does that help? Now that's probably leading towards school choice. I think that's one of those ideas we really have to think seriously about. Does competition help us do better? If you're going to lose business, don't you try to make a better product? I'm just saying, we got to talk. But school systems use each other. So Ohio, this is before Governor Kasich, this has been done for a long time, puts together 20 similar districts. So whatever district you're in, they develop 20 other districts that match yours demographically. So the same kind of student makeup, the same kind of general household income. And so that's called the CUP report. If you go, and you can Google this anytime, you go ODE in your Google bar, Ohio Department of Ed, ODE, and then comes up their front page, and right in the top is a search bar. You can put CUPP, CUP report. And like I said, I sent this PowerPoint to Mary Ann, and Mary Ann can send it to anybody so you can get this stuff again. But the CUP report is one. It'll give you a whole line of expenditures, how you're spending money, and then right next to that, a whole line of your CUP report is your similar districts. So those 20 other districts that compare to you demographically. And then the next line is the state. So it's kind of a good report. Similar district report. Also, you can put similar right up there in that search bar, and it'll kind of guide you through. You gotta click on a few things, but you can get to your similar districts and find out who they are. Okay? Caution, comparing yourselves to other failing systems. So I really don't like to use that for much of anything. I just want to know our taxpayers give us this amount of money, that's what we have to spend. And we're going to address our needs with that amount of money. Okay? Mansfield, 76% of the students in Mansfield schools are proficient or below. So get those Ds or below on the standardized tests overall. Not very good, but I think that's why there's a lot of conversion in charter schools in the area. Yeah, so they have some school choice there. Probably a good idea. AYP is adequate yearly progress, was not met. They only passed 5 of the 26 indicators, those 26 indicators. So they're rated continuous improvement. That makes sense. That would be a problem. Lexington, 44%, and Ontario, 47%, got proficient or below. Still, that means almost half your students, getting close to half the students, are just proficient or below. Okay? AYP was met with both of them, and they both got 26 out of 26 of the indicators. Again, that's not that hard to do. Pretty much everybody does that. Okay. When students matter most, and again, a presentation on ODE, we put in that title and find that presentation. They have some beautiful charts in there. But it reports that NA, so our national scores on these standardized tests, are flat, have been flat over time, no improvement. And unfortunately, Springboro, and honestly, Springboro has a pretty good, strong ego, and we feel like we're all that. So that being the case, we took quite a shock when he said, Springboro, you would actually only qualify as a B district. And, you know, of course we said, what? We're excellent. So there's going to be a lot of districts, once they implement these new standards, are going to know that they're just a B district, and they have some improvement to do. And I think it's good. We're finally being honest that we have deficiencies. And we have to say, well, we got to do something different. The model we've been using isn't working. I think it's all good. There's little evidence that class size and teacher-student ratios have a consistent impact on student performance. We have the resources and money. We've been putting it into education. We have the educated professionals. We've got them there. Where are we going wrong? Keep that question in mind, please. College and career ready. We always say that. And I want to focus on that because I always said, how do we know that they're career ready? And, you know, we had well, last year, we had a program of studies put in front of the board members, and it's a big packet. And it's all the courses that we offer at the high school level. And I saw that we were adding a couple courses. We were adding music appreciation, and we were adding guitar. And so I looked at this report that our Cincinnati Enquirer put out, and they had looked at the job growth, in what sectors were the job growth for the last 10 years, and then what they projected for the next 10 years. And I just had to say out loud, sometimes it just comes out and I can't help myself. I said, I don't see music appreciator on this list here. And I don't see guitarist on this list. How are we addressing the career needs of our students in the future? We need to add courses and think about viability of programs. We have to consider, what do they need? They need a whole lot of like robotics, computers, technology. That's the careers. Medicine. Look at those. We have to start using real life reports, not just some feel-good stuff, right? So we did, we're making some changes. We've added an AP statistics course. We've added some things, but that's up to a school board to start saying. The district should maybe already be doing it, but that doesn't always happen. So the school board members should be coached to say, what are the careers? What are you trying to train them for? And at the time I got on the school board, I noticed that our remedial rates, the number of our students that stayed in state to college, that 23% of them had to take remedial courses to get in. They didn't meet the minimum competencies to get into college. That's 1 in 5. That's high. I just simply asked, as school board members should, what are we doing to address that? Are we doing something? Have we seen those numbers? Are we concerned about those numbers? Well, I am, but what are we doing? And I think we did start to institute some things to address those numbers. And today, it came out just a month ago, in January, we're down to 14%. Still too high. Still too high. I feel like if even one of our students wants to go to college, and doesn't meet the minimum competency to get in, I think we have work to do. We have to set our graduation requirements, perhaps, at what it takes to get into college. And they don't have to choose to go to college, but I think we should prep them for that. And if we have a few that don't make it, I'm not okay with that. We always need to try to get to a place where we have every student at a minimum competency level. Not everybody shares that. But we're looking at this study that showed that in 1973, 72% of people that graduated high school did not need a college degree to get a job. The projection is in that 2018, only 38% will not need a college degree to get a job. Make sense? I should reword that. It's kind of a double negative. But no college required for 38%. That means a lot more are going to need a college degree. Not everybody, but we need to at least have some minimum competency expectations. Remedial rates for students. I looked it up. Ontario graduates, 27% need remedial courses to stay in state to college. That's 1 in 5 that graduate that stay in state. Lexington, 36% have to take remedial courses, and in Mansfield, 43%. And what I heard from somebody, telling me about Springboro, when I asked that question, I do try to ask things in public. They do get a little bit more attention when I say things in public, so I tend to do that rather than, I think what OSBA would rather I do is ask that behind closed doors. But I noticed that we get more attention to that issue if I say it in a board meeting. So afterwards, I got a person came up and said, well, that's not taking into account the people that probably shouldn't go to college, and that's not taking into account that other schools do worse. And really, I don't think we should take comfort in knowing that other schools do worse. Like I said, if even one can't do it, I think we have a problem that we need to just say, how are we going to address that? Enrollment versus spending. So I started looking at how are you spending with inside the districts in this area, and just some information off of ODE. You find all this information on ODE. It's a little difficult to navigate, but all you got to do is call me. My phone number's on all these flyers, which I don't know if you all got them. But call me. I can guide you through ODE's site so you can look at your district. It's always good for community members to know where. Okay, did you all get one?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, but I looked at there, and Lexington and Ontario enrollment's been flat for the last 4 years, 07 to 11. While expenses and spending increased 3% for Lexington and 2% for Ontario. Is that right, Ontario? Okay, that's what I thought I heard you say. But revenue was flat for both of those districts. Staff full-time equivalents, that's number of people you have full-time, decreased by 1% in Lexington and increased by 4% in Ontario. I guess that would cause me to question, why are we hiring more people when enrollment's flat? I would definitely think that's an appropriate question. Ontario, the average administrative salary, though, what came up in the CUP report, and again, I'm just trying to give you ideas on good questions about spending habits. And your average administrative salary was $23,000 more than your similar districts. Remember, those have similar demographics to the Ontario area. During this time, median household income stayed flat. So for quite a while, household incomes in both of those areas have stayed completely the same. System failure and fiscal response. So what I'm referring to is sometimes when you've got this growth here, flat here, flat here, you have to look at why are we spending the way we're spending then? Shouldn't it be flat in most, if not all places? It's just some good questions to ask. I wouldn't judge that. Mansfield enrollment went down 7% per year. It's been a significant exodus from the area, while expenses and spending per pupil increased by 18%. I said my kids won't lose IQ points if their teacher doesn't get a raise. They're going to be fine. But we keep projecting for the moon. We sell a levy based on the moon, and then we spend to it because we got it. Because the taxpayer said okay 9 times in 20 years. So we got to stop projecting things that aren't true. We needed to not, and Worthington is a perfect example. They projected in their 5-year forecast that they were going to lose state funding. Because they did that, it looked like they needed money. They passed a levy. And so I wrote to the board member there that I know very well, kind of in an argument back and forth. I said, are you going to refund the tax money now? Because you got it under false pretenses. But that's the manipulation that happens in education. The money it's always about the money. Forecasts are made to convince people we're going to need more, so get your pockets ready a couple years in advance. That has to stop. We have enough money in most systems. I'm not saying all of them. We have enough. We need to make ends meet, but there's disparity we've got to talk about. We do have a shortage of subs because right now in the state of Ohio they have to be licensed or certified, and there aren't that many of those. If they open this up, which I hope OSBLC will take on this charge, but we need to open it up so that subs don't have to be certified, that they could be experts in their field and come in and teach a class for a day, because that would open up. But anyway, that does not impact, unless you have teachers who are chronically taking their personal days and their sick days. And then it does impact the bottom line. It's in their negotiated agreement that they get 15 sick days. That's state law. And that they get, this is negotiated, 3 or 4 personal days. So that's a total of what?
Do they get that pay if they don't take them?
You can
They can accumulate them.
That's what I'm wondering.
And each contract is different and you have to work through that contract. Ours right now says you can accumulate 275 of those days. And then upon retirement, we pay 1/4 of the cost of that day, but it's averaged for the last 3 years of their pay. Usually by the time they might choose to leave, they're way up there on the pay schedule. So that quarter is quite a bit of money. It can be $30,000, $40,000. Now, the state requires that you let them accumulate 120 days. So maybe that's a part of the negotiated agreement people need to talk to their school district about, is ratcheting down those accumulated days to 120. Our superintendent, we have a new guy, brand new. This is my 3rd year on the board, and this is our 3rd superintendent. Now, they keep blaming me for that, but I'm just a mom.
broad shoulders.
I'm not, I'm just asking questions. I don't think I made anybody go. They decided that all on their own. And I'm on my 3rd treasurer too. Sometimes they need to get off the merry-go-round at a different stop because we need somebody outside the box. And this time we looked outside the box and we got somebody outside the box. And he really is focused, laser focused, his words, on the children and their learning. And that's what we want. I'd like to look at the change. So again, is the district responsive to the economic crisis, or is district responsive to the economic reality in a community? So if you look at your community, it's the first bar. Okay. They lost income in the last 2 years. Here it looked like it wasn't too far off to me. I wouldn't even be barking about that one. And then here we're way off. Again, not a responsive kind of system typically. Here there must have been a buyout. Do you know what a buyout is? Because we know they didn't take less income. Nobody got a pay cut, because that would be front page every newspaper in the state, because that doesn't happen. But my guess is that there's a buyout, so those people at the upper end kind of made the whole curve go backwards a little bit. And we're going to have that too, because we got a big buyout this year in our district. And it does save a lot of money. I really wrestled with whether that makes sense in my head, but it did financially for the district. We did. I was outvoted. It was when I was outvoted. Now I'm board president, so obviously I have the majority with me. But back when I didn't, I got outvoted on everything. I simply said what I had to say, though, and went on with life. I think the community, though, really started to understand where I was coming from and started agreeing with me and hired 2 more of me then, in, not last November, but the one before, making it board majority. So anyway, it's okay to be outvoted. You tell your board members, or if you get on the board and you're by yourself, it's okay. Just explain why you're voting the way you are. Keep up your narrative about it's children first. Tell me how that's for the children, and I'll go for it. Just convince me. But unfortunately, OSBA will pick your candidates for you. Boards hire them to find the superintendent. So they'll bring a pool of candidates, and they'll say, here's the best ones for you. It does. And we said, oh, really? Okay. I said no. They said yes. Anyway, we got, that was number 2. Number 3 now, we have board majority. We got to pick somebody outside the box, and he really is focused on children's learning. Isn't that what we all want? He wants to make Springboro the leader in the state. I'm good with that. I think we can be. And he knows he won't go back on the ballot. He doesn't want to go back on the ballot. He said, they've said no. I'm done. The answer's clear. But I want to give you an example of what board members are up against, is that the third month I was there, just sworn in, 3 months later, a superintendent announced he was resigning, a treasurer announced he was resigning, and the union said, we charge Kelly Kohls with a ULP, an unfair labor practice. And it was absolute nonsense, but it's the way that unions have to bully people into being quiet, sit down and be quiet. And it didn't work with me. Ask my husband, we've been together 35 years, that never works. The bullying thing would never work. So it didn't work in their favor, but it got front page news. And there were 685 comments to that article about Kohls charged with the ULP. Union says she's bullying them. 685 comments, 600 of them said, union, we know who the bully is, you get out of town. It was great, because it totally backfired on him. That's perfect. That's what you gotta do. You gotta stick up for somebody who's not following that same party line. They said I talk to employees. Absolutely. When should a board member never be allowed to talk to an employee? When they have a bargaining unit. Unbelievable. How could I find out what's going on in the district? We're told by OSBA, don't walk through the buildings. We're told, well, I have children in there, of course I'm going to walk through, but even if I didn't, a board member, could you imagine a board member of a hospital being told don't walk through the hospital? Could you imagine? But that's what OSBA tells board members. Don't walk through the building, you'll make them too nervous. Well, by gosh, I'm okay with that. You know, I'm sure those people doing their job won't get nervous. And that's one of the problems. We don't reward effective teaching. We don't even measure it, so we can't reward it. So there are some that actually hurt education, and we can't get rid of them because of the negotiated agreement, or the labor unit's going to fight you on that. And anytime they give a grievance to a school district, that costs legal funds. And so you try to avoid those. We don't want to take money out of our already tight budget. So it's a problem everywhere you look. Mansfield household income lost $600 in 2011, the average household in just that year. Average teacher salary increased by $3,623. Again, a little difficulty with fiscal response, I think. Average salary of a staff member increased by $1,700. Ontario households lost income to the tune of $2,137 in 11, less. Teacher salaries increased by $623. I'm not telling you whether that's good or bad. And then average staff salary was flat again. I think that's because of that buyout, probably a buyout program. Mansfield, look at 5-year forecast. I look at the 5-year forecast because then I can see what the district is assuming is going to change. And so the assumptions are pretty clear. Retirement will stay flat. Again, if you've got less students, you might need less, I don't know. Remember, enrollment decreases 7% per year in 07 through 11. However, total expenditures went up. Ask, what is income from all sources? Oh, yeah. I don't know what I was meaning there. Assumes that the district will deficit spend $4 million a year, and it assumes that the district will need another new money levy in 14. Is that right? Got one on the ballot in Mansfield? Is there one coming up? Did somebody say November?
There's one on the ballot this year,
Okay. That's for
and
14.
they probably will put another one up. It'll be another, probably renewal in 2014.
No, I mean beyond the renewal. Beyond the renewal. They're going to have two come up. The forecast shows a deficit even if you pass the renewal. So,
Well, they're probably just not, they're probably going to pass this
yeah,
emergency renewal,
right.
and then,
And then get on the ballot again next year
yeah.
for new money.
And it'll
Because
be,
it shows you've got a deficit, unless they significantly change their forecast, which could happen, because ours changed quickly too. Once we started looking at it differently, ours changed rather quickly, a $42 million swing in fact. Okay, so Lexington assumes increase in revenue if renewal is passed. You'll actually have more revenue than you do now if you pass the renewal. I guess my question as a board member would be, do we need the whole renewal then? Why can't we ratchet back the amount on the renewal? Anyway, I'm not your board member, but I think it's a good question for your board members. Assumes that expenses will stay flat and enrollment went down previously, so you probably need a study. An enrollment study would be a good thing for you all to suggest. Just look at what we're doing here. And then it assumes that you will deficit spend a few $100,000 per year. So you probably, and that's in 16 and 17. Ontario assumes increased revenue if renewal is passed. Again, more revenue coming in than you currently have per pupil. I think that's a win definitely for the district, but do you need all that money that's in the renewal? Can you ratchet back the renewal? And in that case, I think if you bring the renewal amount down in millage, it's called a replacement. But be careful of the replacement terminology, because I think districts believe that the consumer doesn't know the difference between a renewal and a replacement could be for more. They could be actually adding an increment to a renewal. Yeah, that happens. Okay, and assumes that expenses will increase by $200,000 per year. Enrollment has been flat, yes, yet assuming a $500,000 increase in personnel, increased retirement and insurance, and purchase services. All of those categories, even though enrollment was flat, were going up in the 5-year forecast. And I, as a board member, or you as a community member, should say, well, I don't understand that. Explain to me why, if enrollment's been flat, are you predicting an increase in enrollment, or why are those price tags going up? I'm not sure that that's an appropriate thing, but assumes that you will deficit spend by $800,000 per year from years 13 to 17. Again, if your district can have a policy that you will not deficit spend, that you will be fiscally sound, and you will only spend what you have coming in. But hopefully, as the state puts in more mandates, and they're not expensive mandates, with us it's just a rearrangement of our priorities. And so we took out a few courses that we really don't need and beefed up a couple courses that we will to meet the 3rd grade reading guarantee and things like that. Why doesn't the system use data to drive their decisions and their actions? Where are your elected officials? When they come back for a levy within a 5-year period, you have to say, what are you guys doing? What's going on? Why aren't you doing your job?
They're part of the cheerleading staff.
They're trained to cheerlead.
That's right.
That's
Absolutely.
right. And they have to be a united front. And they have to be okay with saying, I'm a different voice. I'm Kelly Kohls. I was elected to do a certain thing. I'm not going to follow that party line because it doesn't work for our students. I showed you globally. I showed you nationally. It's not working educationally for our students. We have to do something different. A new model, please. Okay? And isn't it, and I'm using a harsh term, dereliction of duties? If they don't say no to stuff once in a while, you should have a split board. You should have some of these votes that are 3-2, 4-1. You should. They're 5 separate people. They do not have to be a 5-0 board. Just say why you voted the way you did. We started talking about putting, maybe, possibly, just talking. Golly. We were all over every news channel and every newspaper, just maybe having somebody armed in a building. And we got an audience of about 500 that night. They were mad about something else too. I get the audiences there. Definitely get a big bunch of groupies. Usually not fans, but that's okay. I'm not there to, tell your board members, you're not there to win popularity contests. You're there to represent the taxpayer on behalf of the students. You're not going to have a crowd like this supporting those board members. That's what makes it hard, is if you're not going to the board meetings, that's okay. But you can at least write to them afterwards, say, hey, good vote. If you kept track of what they're voting on, what they're talking about, good vote. Because we just need a few pats on the back, knowing that we're doing the right thing. And as things come up, write to them and say, I want you to vote this way on that. And then I know it's hard to keep track of what they're talking about. It is. Board is at the top of the organizational chart. You might need to remind your board members. Anybody here considering running for school board? Just one? Please, more people, raise your hands. We need more conservatives on school boards. And by the way, my 2 buddies that got elected with me, we're doing fabulous things now, but neither of them have children in the district. And what they'll often say to you is, you don't have any skin in the game. Well, you mean my cash isn't enough skin? But the guys were able to say, we did a community survey, and 67% of this community do not have children in the district. So I actually represent the majority of the community, which is true. 67% of your communities usually don't have kids in the district. So any of you can represent. You don't have to have children in there, and your cash is skin, by the way. You just might have to remind them. Same difference. But the board, we went ahead and published our organizational chart. I insisted, might sound egotistical, but what I wanted people to know is that the board is at the top, and the superintendent and treasurer work for the Board of Education. We don't do the day-to-day. We let them do that. But we do make sure that we're on track. And board members should be looking at the data. They should be looking at community incomes and saying, well, how can we pay and benefit if it doesn't match what the community's seeing? How can we ignore the fiscal and economic realities everybody else is living? Boards should be able to do that. OSBA, I've kind of badmouthed them enough probably, but they do plenty of workshops. Some of it very, very helpful for board members, but unfortunately it's kind of like the federal government. They've got a little bit of good in there, but a lot of not so hot. And we should shut it off. But anyway, but if you can look at the academic and fiscal results of their philosophy and their coaching, I think I just indicated there's problems. Okay, legal counsel. Sometimes it's frustrating, but legal counsel, you ask legal counsel questions, and you kind of have to get to know the legal counsel because the results, everybody has a bias. We all live with a bias. And an orientation might be, of a legal counsel might be, well, I'm going to protect the employees. And all under the, we're going to keep you from getting grievances, we're going to keep you from getting sued. When really it's just a protection of the employees, not necessarily what's good for the kids. So we asked a question, you know what pickup is? You know what pickup is? Mm-hmm. Pickup is where the state mandates that you pay 14% of every employee's income into their retirement system. It also mandates that 10% of their income is paid by them. But in many school districts across the state of Ohio, if not most, that 10% of the administrators is paid by you also. Yeah. So it's like a bonus. And I was calling it a bonus. I said, well, I don't know how we can afford this bonus. We've had 4 emergency levies fail, and we stopped high school busing. We have a pay-to-play that's $475. We stopped ordering textbooks, materials, and supplies, and we were being told I can't possibly teach 32 students. And I said, I know, that's a lot. We don't want it that high. We want it down there at 28. Why are we doing that? Well, the reason was that we had chose a different teaching style. That's what I heard from curriculum director. We chose a different teaching style. Then they could get together during that 1 hour a day and talk about the students and their progress. And then I said, well, I think that we're paying a large sum of money for these experts to be in the classroom. I think they should go back in the classroom. And let's have aides do some of the other stuff that the duties we're doing. And the rest of the board agreed. I just, very calmly stated my case. The rest of the board agreed. Teachers went back in the classroom. We were able to bring classroom sizes down to 28. Put them back. But I heard from my business manager that it was done to make a point. I said, really? Well, what point would that be? He said, well, large class sizes gets people's attention, and we weren't passing levies. So we gave an extra duty to a whole grade level of teachers so that we could ratchet up class sizes when we didn't need to do that, right? So when and that's kind of what I was getting at. I asked for everybody's schedule for the day. I wanted to see how often are we doing these duty things. And so we asked at the high school kind of the same thing. Let's ratchet back those duties. Let's give those duties to aides, and playground duty or parking lot duty or bathroom duty or hallway duty. We've got aides for that, and they're paid a whole lot less money than the experts we hired to teach. Let's put the teachers in the classroom, and we've been able to reduce class size and not add teachers, for our increasing enrollment at the time. So there's just kind of micromanaging types of questions. Don't be bullied out of those questions. You have a right. Everything in that district, you community members, is yours to have. All you got to do is ask for it. They're all public documents, and you cannot be denied those public documents, except for criminal background checks you're not allowed to have, and medical records you're not allowed to have. You will not be able to get a social security number. There's just a very few things that you cannot have, but you can ask for any person's personnel file. You can absolutely have that. That's a public document. You can have, what I asked for early on was 3 years of credit card receipts. Again, I'm sure people said that's micromanaging. I don't care. I'm an elected official. I want 3 years of your credit card statements. I want to see what's going on. I wanted to see if during these emergency levy times we were spending money on things we didn't need to, and I did find some of that. I did find some of that. $900 at a restaurant in Cincinnati. I didn't think that that was an emergency levy kind of spending pattern. And when I think when an administrator makes over $100,000, they can buy their own lunch. I don't think that the taxpayer needs to buy their lunch. So we stopped a lot of those things. We used to have 33 cell phones in the district. We now have 15. We used to have 23 administrators. We now have 18. So there was a lot of ways that we could ratchet this down, but it took a micromanaging, overbearing. That was in the newspaper, by the way. They called me micromanager, overbearing. So one day into the board meeting, I made myself some plaques just to wear them on my chest, just so everybody knows. I'm a micromanager, overbearer, whatever, I don't care. I don't care. This is not fat, this is thick skin. I don't care. I don't care. Call me whatever you like. My children have called me worse. I know. Okay, and the union has an effect on your board members because there's definitely an intimidation factor. They know how to do it. They do it well. They fill the audience and they talk over me. I don't know if you saw, I don't know if it was up in this area, but lots of my friends said, I saw you on the news the other night. People who didn't know me saw me at the grocery store and said, I saw you on the news. And I was telling somebody in the audience that I was quiet while they were speaking. I expected them to be quiet while I was speaking. And that wasn't part of the whole news program. It's just they just so happened to catch me scolding somebody in the audience. But there were 500 people there, and they would do this as we were trying to talk. I said, "Geez, we sat here quietly while you badgered." I say, "Thank you for your opinion." In my head, I'm saying, "Have a seat." But you'll find there's a lot of things about how many outside hours outside the classroom that a principal can request or require. They can require very little. Actually, the negotiated agreement doesn't allow that. But when you go into negotiations, and almost everybody will if you're on the school board, you can tell your school board members, please negotiate more time for the principal to have talking to teachers. But they have a 7 1/4 hour workday. And that's usually just class time. There's not much as a window before or after. And that, again, you have to negotiate. Okay, so here's what I have to say in conclusion, guys. I can see your eyes glazing over, so I'll draw this to a close. But get new coaches. Community members, board members, they need to get new coaches. And we have to get some strength. We have to be able to know what we're entitled to get. And it's a quality education. We are paying for it. So insist that they look at certain things in detail, make changes, that your board members do the job you elected them to do, and that's to spend within their means. And I blame a lot of what's gone on, honestly, on school board. I think the academic failures are school board's faults. I said there's a formula here, there's a system failure, and I think the parents are big time responsible for some of that. I think the school systems are big time responsible for that, but you elected people to oversee this system and they've dropped the ball on you. So I wanted to form this Ohio School Board Leadership Council to be the coach for these people. And I'm going to coach them to be strong. Live within your means. Insist that you live within your means. Insist that this district attend to the educational needs. Look at the data. It's all over the place. Find the data. Look at your district. See who's missing out. My cohorts here that are on the school board with me insist now that they get individual reports on students. Talk about micromanaging. I love it. I love it. I can sit back and relax because they're the micromanagers now. And it's wonderful to have board majority. I just get to sit and stand with a gavel, and and they get to be the ones that ask all of the questions because they're that interested. And you have somebody here, you should help her get on the school board. And I would love it if anybody else is interested. March 16th, right here at the Berlin Church in Lewis Center, OSBLC will have a free, anyone interested in school board, little conference. It's from 10 to 2, or 10:30 to 2:30. It's going to be on our website, osblc.com. It'll say events. Click on that. We have something in April, we have something in August, and then we have our big convention in November. It's just a bunch of people like me. We're all just volunteers. And right now, I'm writing out of the Kohls personal checking account checks to someone to analyze the legislation coming out of the state. I want to know what things affect us, and so I go ahead and pay a legislative analyst for us so that we can put that on our website and you can see what she's doing. So right now, all of us are just donating. We'd love it if you could go on osblc.com and hit the donate button. Or if you want to be a member and get updates and come to our website and get this networking system we've got worked out, that's $40 a year. School board members, we charge $200 because we have a different network. We work a lot harder with school boards. I get calls at least once a week from other school board members from across the state. We also talk to each other. What's your school doing about this? What are you doing about this? They're amazed across the state that we've been able to do away with pickup. It's not that amazing. Other schools have started doing it too. So once we get the ball rolling, we can get a lot done so that money goes back to educating children.